So as you can see, I've pulled out another mask. Don't expect this all the way through Halloween, but I've got some masks I wanted to show off, and this one actually kind of pertains to the video today because this one is a butterfly themed mask, as you can tell. This on for a little bit. And I'm just going to apologize up at the top if there's a bunch of like cuts in this because my allergies are kicking up again, and I may have to pause every now and then to sneeze and then cut that out because I don't think all of you want to watch me sneeze multiple times on camera. I sneezed like 6 times before making this video. That was fun. What I wanted to talk about for this video is obviously I wanted to talk about Menoa Bellucci, who is this adult, is an adult that interacts with the DigiDestined in the final Digimon for the Digimon Adventures series. It's Digimon: The Last Evolution. She plays this kind of former-ish DigiDestined. She had been a DigiDestined when she was a child, and then at one point that Digimon disappeared. I'll go over that a little bit, well, a lot. But what happens is she interacts quite a bit with Ty and Matt and Izzy and TK and some of the other ones a little bit, giving them information about kind of what's going on. The plot that she kind of gets involved in is there is a Digimon that keeps kidnapping the consciousness of DigiDestined and kind of putting them into comas. And then the Digimon kind of disappear because like the consciousness of the DigiDestined is not there. And I'm going to go over that as I go through her summary and her discussion, of course. But what we get with Menoa is she is this adult who knows quite a bit about the digital world, quite kind of the way that, you know, Maki and Diego did in, you know, for the Digimon Adventure Tri series. And now I am going to take the mask off because it's getting a little annoying. It is a very pretty mask, though. I do very much like it. You can go back here in the background. And it fell over. Stand up. Stand up. And fine. Put it on the desk. But what we see with Menoa is, what we learn about her backstory is, first of all, she did have a Digimon, of course. As I said, her Digimon's name was Morphomon, which is this very pretty butterfly Digimon. And what happened was, when Menoa was 9 years old, she gained Morphomon as her Digimon partner, and she spent the next 5 years together with her Digimon as best friends, the same way that like Ty and the rest of the group did with their Digimon, spending as much time with them as possible, you know, when they were in the digital world, and then when they came to the real world, and then, of course, when they went back to the digital world. And, of course, yeah, there were the heartbreaking moments for them where, you know, they had to leave their Digimon in the digital world, or where the Digimon had to go back to the digital world for a certain amount of time for whatever reason. But they still had those very, very strong bonds with them, even if those were only during, like, short intervals that they got to interact with them. But what we see what happens with Menoa is also extremely intelligent, and she skipped so many grades in school that she gets to go to college so much earlier on. So she's 9 when she first gets Morphomon, has her for 5 years, so she's about, that would put her at 14. And what ends up happening is Morphomon starts to disappear. She kind of starts to disintegrate, fall to pieces right in front of Menoa. And Menoa is, of course, just so distraught and upset by this because she doesn't understand what's going on. She doesn't understand that she, you know, she's reached her potential and now she loses her Digimon. She gives a very good explanation for this in the movie, and I'll get to that. But, you know, Morphomon disintegrates in her arms, and you know, we saw how hard it was previously when, like, a Digimon died because they were destroyed. We've seen that with Patamon. We've seen that with Wormmon. We've seen that with, you know, so many of the other Digimon. Even with, you know, with Black War Greymon when he died. Or even with, you know, with Meikumon being the most recent example with that. Or what happened with, you know, Maki and Tapirmon. We see this where it's, this is a different circumstance. This is a Digimon that is not dying because it was destroyed, because it ran out of power, because it was defeated by an enemy, or a Digimon that's dying because it sacrificed itself the way that, you know, Blackboard Greymon did, or the way that, you know, kind of what happened to a Tapirmon when it was, you know, kind of used as kind of basically a sacrifice vocal point by the other Celestial Digimon in order to defeat the Dark Masters. There is a difference. This is a Digimon that is not being destroyed in battle, that is not being destroyed at like this world, you know, saving moment. This is just a Digimon that belongs to a little girl that lives in the real world, belongs to this, you know, barely a teenager girl. And she watches as it disintegrates in her arms. And she is crying, and Morphomon's crying, and it kind of breaks Menoa. And I can't necessarily blame her. That would be a very traumatic experience to happen to anyone. We saw, you know, I talked about this with Tai and Matt and Sora, of course, and to a degree, to a lesser extent with the other DigiDestined, because of the fact that we watch in, you know, Digimon The Last Evolution, where we're introduced to Menoa, about how the Digimon, when a DigiDestined reaches the end of their potential, the peak of their potential, quote unquote, as Menoa puts it, that when a DigiDestined reaches that point, when they stop growing, then the Digimon disappears because there's nothing left there for the Digimon to feed off of. And we watch Tai and Matt and Sora have to say goodbye to Agumon and Gabumon and Biomon. And it is assumed that the rest of the DigiDestined will eventually have to do the same thing. As I've stated before, with them, we do see that via the epilogue that we get at the end of the second Digimon Adventure series, where we, you know, cut forward 25 years and they're all grown up and they have kids and they have their Digimon again. That implies that somehow they did get their Digimon back. And I happen to subscribe to the theory that their Digimon come back when they become parents, because now they have this whole new potential that they get to foster. And they get this whole other kind of second chance with their own Digimon, and they have their child, and of course their child has a Digimon. So they get to help nurture that. And, you know, that Digimon partners becoming a much more familiar thing in the world. Much more people know about Digimon, much more people are aware of them and see them fight or have Digimon. We don't necessarily see in Digimon The Last Evolution, we don't necessarily see a huge amount of people walking around with, you know, just their Digimon like in their arms or walking beside them, but the DigiDestined don't have to worry quite so much about hiding their Digimon, which is very nice, because like Kari walks around with, you know, Gatomon, and TK's got Patamon, and they don't have to be in disguises or pretend that they're stuffed animals. But with Menoa, she was 14 when this happened, and I mean, like, yes, I know what it's like to put down a pet. I've mentioned that before in a video. I think it was the Bolt video, or one of the other various videos about dogs. That it's like, I know what it's like to have to make that decision. But this was a decision outside of Menoa's control. This is a decision to a degree outside of all of the DigiDestined's control. Because, of course, if they had their choice, they would keep their Digimon with them forever, because they love their Digimon, and their Digimon is a part of them. And they have this amazing bond with them. And, of course, we saw that with Meiko and Meikumon, and with the other DigiDestined and their Digimon. Menoa and Morphomon are no different in that regard, in the fact that there is this bond between them. And yeah, maybe they didn't end up doing any types of like battles or, you know, world-saving events that they had to do, but they still had that bond. And Morphomon vanishes in front of Menoa. And then Menoa spends the next 8 years learning everything she can, researching everything she can get her hands on about Digimon. And at some point, she came across Morphomon's data, her code. She then uses that code to create a new Digimon. Not the first time we've seen a Digimon created, obviously. Willis created the Digi-Egg that ended up becoming, you know, Diaboromon when he was a child. And Menoa appears to be quite a bit smarter than Willis, even though Willis is stated by Izzy to kind of be like genius, you know, extremely, extremely high intelligence. Menoa is also extremely intelligent. She's also become like a teacher at a college, or like a kind of like a fellowship at a university where she gets to study things in New York. And we do get to see her office, and I'll go over that a little bit later. But she also becomes a person of interest by the FBI. And she ends up kind of having this, assistant, quote unquote, he's a spy by the FBI, sent in to keep an eye on her, named Kyotaro Emura. And what happens is, as I stated, Menoa comes across Morphomon's data, and she uses that data to create a Digimon that is called Eosmon. Eosmon then, is able to change form as it gets stronger, of course, as do all Digimon. And she uses this Digimon to go and start like kidnapping DigiDestined, and finding the ones where she knows where they are, but she does not have access to all of them. So she comes up with this plan. And the FBI have been tracking her for years. She doesn't go directly into, oh, I'm just going to kidnap all of these DigiDestined and kind of put them into comas and everything, and then make them be with their Digimon for the rest of their lives, so they don't have to be ripped away from their Digimon the way that my Digimon was ripped away from me. Now, you can see where that's coming from. You can see her concept there of like not wanting other children to suffer, other DigiDestined to suffer the way that she did. And to a degree, that is a commendable thing. But unfortunately, she goes about it the very wrong way. She goes about it the way of, well, I'm not really giving them a choice in the matter. And I'm not really, these children are up to the point where they're going to be losing their Digimon anyway, because she goes after like kids, and then she also goes after the older DigiDestined, like Tai and his group. But she just starts doing this and gathering up all of these, these different DigiDestined and everything. But this is where she starts to interact with Tai and his group, Tai and Izzy and Matt and Joe. Well, not Joe, but Tai and Izzy and Matt. And TK is there as well, which is a reference to, in the, original Digimon movie, where we have Tai and Izzy and then Matt and TK, of course, having to, deal with Eosemon. This is a reference to them, and they do have to go into the internet. But first what happens is Menoa gets in contact with Izzy, and she goes and she talks with Izzy, and Tai and Matt and TK and Tai are there. Tai and Matt and TK and Tai. Yes, there's two Tais. No, but they're there. And what ends up happening is, she starts to explain to them that, oh, there's this Digimon out there that's this rogue Digimon that is trying to steal all of these DigiDestined's consciousness via the web. And if we go into the web, into the internet, and we stop the Digimon, then we'll be able to save these DigiDestined, so they don't have to, be unconscious and everything, and their Digimon keeps disappearing. She, of course, is hiding the fact that she's the one that's in charge of all of this, that she's the one causing all of these problems, but she's explaining it to them that, like, she's been tracking this Digimon and that she's found a way to fight it. And they need Omnimon in order to do that. Therefore, they go into the internet, and, it's kind of a, flashback to, fighting Diaboromon, of course. And what ends up happening is Tai and Matt, they DNA digivolve, and they get, Omnimon, and they're fighting against Eosmon, which admittedly, I do like Eosmon's designs. It's based off of a butterfly, the same way that Morphomon's design is based off of a butterfly, Morphomon Metamorphosis. And, I like the Eosmon design. But what happens is Eosmon ends up being too strong, and Eosmon is able to defeat Omnimon. It's also, at this time frame, it lands for right when Tai and Matt, when the timers appear on their Digivices, that kind of, tick down the amount of time they have left with their Digimon, and the faster they digivolve their Digimon, and the more they digivolve them, the faster the timer will run out. And what ends up happening is, they end up back in the real world, and Menoa does this whole explanation as to, well, the reason that Digimon choose children for their partners is because they have all of this potential, and that when that potential goes away, when the when the DigiDestined stops growing, when they've grown up, quote unquote, then the Digimon vanishes. The Digimon disappears. And she explains it as that bond is broken forever. And she does this very good speech about it. It's basically just like, you want the speech, just go and watch the end quote of the video. That's the speech that I used for that, because that was the main quote that we get from Menoa, beyond her acting insane. But she goes off and she tells Izzy and Ty and Matt and TK that yeah, those timers on your Digivices, that's how much longer you have left with your Digimon. Matt kind of takes this with a grain of rice, or a grain of salt, excuse me, and he goes and he contacts Davis and Ken and Cody and Yoli, and they go to where Menoa's office is at the university, and they break into her office, and they find information about Eosmon. And, Matt kind of figures out that, oh, well, we're being tracked, that, they're all being tracked via their phones and everything. So he's having them call from payphones and use burner phones and stuff like that, because Matt is smart and he apparently watches a lot of crime documentaries, or a lot of crime dramas. And Matt is gathering up this information, and he's trying to figure out, okay, so it's either Menoa or Imura, who's the FBI guy, that is keeping an eye on her. Either it's one of them that's causing the problems, and he thinks that it's actually Imura, because Menoa seems to be helping them. And then Matt interacts with Imura because he finds that TK has become unconscious. Izzy got an email, or got a link to the other that had TK and Kari both kidnapped. And, Ty goes after Kari, of course, and Matt goes after TK. During this time frame, Mimi also becomes unconscious. She gets taken, and Palmon disappears. Same thing happens with Joe. Sora is kind of not interacting with the DigiDestined too much at this point in time. This is when she's going into very much, she's kind of also going through the same thing with like the timer running out for Biomon. And Menoa is sending Eosmon after these different ones, and she's using their phones and their Digivices in order to track them. What she needs in order to get all of the other DigiDestined all around the world is she needs access to Izzy's list, because Izzy has this huge list that he has been compiling for years of all of these different DigiDestined all around the world. That would include Willis and Michael and like all those other miscellaneous DigiDestined that I went through when I did the miscellaneous DigiDestined video. He's probably like retroactively added in possibly Oikawa and possibly Maki and Diego at some point, considering what they learn about them. He's probably also added in so many of the other hundreds of thousands of DigiDestined that he's come across over the years. Because they have he's built this entire network of DigiDestined with, oh, well, there's more that popped up in Australia, so we'll send our friends from Australia to go and meet them. And, they popped up in other places around the world. And, they go after them and try to help, help them introduce them to this world of being a DigiDestined. And kind of letting them know, you're not alone. There's other people out here, and if you need help, just let us know and we'll come and help you, type of thing. And Izzy's been making this entire list, and Menoa needs access to that list. That is literally the whole basis for her trying to get a hold of Izzy and Matt and Ty and TK. TK's kind of an off thing, but TK gets put into the coma, and so does Kari. And Izzy has figured out that it's Menoa that's doing this. And Kotaru, or the FBI guy, cannot pronounce his name, Imura, he explains to Matt that we have been following Menoa for years. She is this brilliant scientist, and we were able to track back Eosmon to her, or something very similar to Eosmon to her, because Eosmon is this manipulated form of Morphomon's data. And Menoa thought that she heard something from the data from, like a remnant of Morphomon telling her to go and prevent the other DigiDestined from going through the same loss that they went through. I would put this into somewhere of a combination of wishful thinking and hallucination because of, she's kind of, snapped in the head at this point in time because, as a 14-year-old, she watched her best friend disappear in front of her and she didn't understand why. And like, if it had been in a battle, it would have been different. If it had been during a giant, catastrophe ending world thing and Morphomon sacrificed herself to protect Menoa, that probably would have been easier to swallow. But this was literally, you grew up and now your friend leaves and you can't see them again. And, going on the whole theory of like, oh, if you have a child, then that potential comes back. Maybe. That's not a guarantee, though, that's why the other DigiDestined's Digimon came back. And even if that was the case, Menoa was 14 years old at the time. She's not going to be ready to have a child for a long time. She's also not interested in having a child because she just wants her friend back. And I don't think necessarily just having a child as the catalyst to bring back your Digimon would be necessarily be enough, because you having a child just to have your Digimon back would also result as being a fairly selfish thing to do. Whereas with the other DigiDestined, yeah, they had a child and then possibly their Digimon came back to them because there's this new potential there to foster. But if you're just having a child in order for your Digimon to come back, then that doesn't align correctly with the way that it works. That's going into a little bit more of like, Destiny type thing, or a little bit more of the, selfish desire versus the way that the digital world is set up type of a thing. But I just kind of wanted to put that there. But what happens is, Matt's off trying to, protect TK, and that doesn't work, and he's getting more information on her. And then Menoa is currently, at that point in time, interacting with Izzy. And Izzy has figured out that Menoa is the source of Eomon, the source of Eosmon. And he manages to get one last message to Tai. And Izzy is then, he's kidnapped and he's put into the coma form, and Tentomon disappears. And this gives Menoa access to Izzy's list, because that was exactly what she wanted. And she basically reveals her plan in front of Izzy before she, has Eosmon, take his consciousness and knock him out. And she basically explains it was like, I lost my Digimon when I was a kid. I had to watch it. I had to watch her disappear in front of my eyes. And I don't want that to be what happens to the rest of these DigiDestined. And if I can prevent that, then why shouldn't I? And that's why she created Eosmon, all in the effort to try to prevent the other children from going through the pain that she went through. So, again, as I said, she has a reason behind it. Same thing with like Maki in regards to wanting to help cause the reboot of the digital world. Maki wanted to see Tapirmon again. Menoa wants to prevent Eosmon, wants to prevent the other DigiDestined from going through the same pain that she went through with losing Eosmon, with losing Morphomon. And that's why she created Eosmon. Eosmon is named after the I think it's the Greek, it's either Greek or Roman goddess of the dawn, Eos. And, what we see is Matt and Tai are like, okay, well, we obviously have to go and stop her. And that's when they go into the digital world, and they go to this Neverworld area that Menoa created inside the digital world, where she has thousands and thousands of Eosmon there. And this is where she's also put each one of the different DigiDestined into their own little crystalline memory world. And this is where we get to see, as I mentioned in Mako's video, we get to see Mako and Mekumon are together again. We get to see Kari and Gatomon as children, TK and Patamon, all the other DigiDestined as children with their Digimon again. Which is just basically a giant throwback to like the Digimon World Tour and the Million Points of Light from the original series. Which, again, I'm fine with this. The other, 8 original DigiDestined are already there, except for Tai and Matt. Davis, Ken, Yoli, and Cody are currently in the U.S. trying to prevent these Eosmon from trying to attack other DigiDestined, and try to, protect them that way. And what happens is Menoa basically explains to Tai and Matt, she's like, if you just surrender, you can come here and you get to live in your memories, and you never have to lose your Digimon. You never have to lose that bond. And I can see where she's coming from. It's a very tempting offer to never have to grow up. It's that Peter Pan concept of the never world, of Neverland, of never having to grow up. No matter what happens, you can stay as this, innocent child and just live in your memories and have fun with your Digimon and, all of that concept. And it's a very appealing thing, as I said, because, I'm 29. I'm going to be 30 in, I'm recording this in September, and I'm going to be 20 next April, or 30 next April. And yeah, that's kind of a scary thought, but it's like, yeah, I don't have my, it's like, I can't go back to being a kid again. I can't go back to just, playing with my friends or playing with my dog or playing with my cousins and all of us being kids again and not having a care in the world. That would be an amazing offer, but there's also that whole concept of, but then I don't get to know what's ahead of me. I don't get to spend time with, the rest of my family. It's this kind of like you're trapped in like an endless loop if you're kind of, in the never world. And yeah, you get to have your Digimon, but the point of having a Digimon, yes, is to give you this partner, this piece of you that fits with you so perfectly, but is there to help you grow as well. You help it grow and it helps you grow. And, yeah, like what I said about, Mako in the previous video, and the, when I did Mako and Mekumon, and I cried, we do get that concept of, well, what if they can't come back? What if the Digimon can't come back? And that's basically what Menoa is trying to prevent, of like, well, the Digimon can't come back from this. She does not know that, there's that possibility that, you keep going and you find something else that can cause you to have your Digimon to come back. That can still happen. She just was obsessed with the fact that, oh, my Digimon is gone. She finds a data. She can't recreate Morphomon, but she can prevent other children from going through that pain. Noble cause, bad execution. And she, basically tells Tai and Matt, you can stay here with us and everything. And they refuse, and they, DNA digivolve, their Digimon, and they get Omnimon, and they're fighting against Eosmon. And Menoa basically has combined a ton of these Eosmon into this one, she has this one main Eosmon, and then the rest of them are kind of all copies. And the main Eosmon and her kind of biomerge for all intents and purposes. Biomerge is what we see in Digimon Tamers, where the Digimon and their tamer fuse together. And this, Menoa does fuse with Eosmon. She's also able to use the other children as a way to stop Tai and Matt from attacking her, because they're in the way, particularly using Kari and TK and, Mimi and Joe, and Sora is not there. Sora is off in the real world still at this point in time. She's also lost Biomon at this point in time, to the timer running out on her Digivice for her time frame with Biomon. And so we get to see that, but we also see all these other DigiDestined that are there as well, that are familiar faces. Like we do see Michael, and we see like Rosa from South America, and we see, a bunch of these other DigiDestined that we saw in Digimon World Tour and in A Million Points of Light, and I went over them in the Digimon Miscellaneous DigiDestined video if you want to go back and rewatch that. But Tai and Matt also have to go through this moment where this is when they have to accept the fact of either we can accept her offer and stay here, or we cannot fight, and we get to spend a little bit longer with Agumon and Gabumon, or we can fight tooth and nail and save our friends. And of course, as I went over in Tai and Matt's videos, they choose to fight tooth and nail to save their friends with Agumon and Gabumon by their sides. And this is when they, this is where we get Agumon Bond of Bravery or Bond of Courage, and Gabumon Bond of Friendship. And, you know, we get Matt and Tai riding on, you know, riding alongside them, and Menoa is of course a part of her Digimon at this point in time, is a part of Eosmon, and Matt and Tai are able to break through to their friends via Tai's whistle, well, Kari's whistle, and they're able to snap their friends out of it, and, you know, their friends then help fight against Menoa. And then Bond of Bravery and Bond of Friendship are able to, you know, Agumon and Gabumon with Tai and Matt are able to, of course, get past all of Eosmon's defenses, which Eosmon is kind of designed to be like this OP type Digimon. Beautifully designed, beautiful like crystalline, you know, butterfly structure type thing that she designed for it. But Menoa loses. Tai and Matt are able to break through the shell that she has been hiding inside of, and are able to defeat Eosmon, and are able to break through to where Menoa is inside of her, to where Menoa is inside of Eosmon. And we get this more of a flashback where we get to watch as Menoa, we finally get to hear the last words that Morphomon said to Menoa, which was, you know, like, that Morphomon said to Menoa, which was like, thank you for, you know, all the fun memories. Thank you for, you know, being with me, for letting me be with you, you know, all that type of stuff, you know, just like these thank you ones, as opposed to, you know, the twisted type thing where it's like, yeah, it's still painful and it still does hurt to watch, but Morphomon wasn't mad about leaving. The same way that like Agumon and Gabumon and Biyomon, for Tai and Sora and Matt, were not mad about getting to leave. They were sad that they weren't going to get to be with their DigiDestined anymore, but they're not angry about it. Tai and Matt were obviously quite angry about that concept, but they accepted it. And this is getting Menoa to the point where now she has to accept it. And she finally does get to, you know, say goodbye to Morphomon. Whether or not Morphomon hears that is kind of left up for debate, but she does finally get to, you know, let go of that pain from losing her partner. And then Menoa is subsequently, once they return to the real world, she is arrested by the FBI. And I don't think we're ever necessarily going to see Menoa again. Doesn't strike me as someone that we're going to see again. She's very smart, so, I mean, like, if they ever did want to do something where they bring back Digimon, as in, like, where they, like, do another continuation of this, because they're doing, like, a reboot of, like, Digimon Adventure, which I want to see, but I haven't yet. There's always a possibility that, if they want to continue something again with Digimon from, like, this point onward, like, as I've mentioned before, where if they do a, Digimon Adventure, you know, anniversary type thing of in regards to like, oh, well, this is, you know, this is the year in, you know, our real life where the kids are all grown up and they have their own kids. So would they do something then? I don't think so. That would be, I think, 2027. So that'd be another 6 years down the line. So they might, but I don't know. And even if they did, I don't necessarily know if Menoa would be a part of that. Very, very one of those villains where it's like, you can see why she did this. You can see why she wanted to, you know, prevent the DigiDestined from suffering the same way she did. But it's also, you went about it the wrong way. Good intentions, bad execution, as I said. So that's what we get for Menoa, Morphomon, and Eosmon. Again, actually, in all honesty, like having her be part of like this research team that like Izzy and Sora's dad have, and like Matt's brother, Joe's brother Jim, like all of them being on like one giant research team with like Ken helping with everything that he still remembers from being the Digimon Emperor, and if they had like access to like all of the computer, you know, data and everything that like Oikawa had, having like all of those minds, and like throw Willis in there too because he's really smart. Having all of, and he made a Digimon, you know, having all of those minds working together would be an amazing thing. Would be awesome to watch all of these different minds like working together to understand the way the digital world works. they wouldn't be able to uncover every single mystery of the digital world, obviously, but they would be able to, at the very least, understand a bit more about it, or maybe understand a way to not like circumvent that concept of like losing your Digimon partner, but find a way to have them come back. That would be a nice way, or like having something where that happens, or like going off of that, like finding a way to get Meikumon back for, you know, Meiko, finding a way to get Morphomon back. You wouldn't be able to get Tapirmon back because Maki's dead and they don't know about Tapirmon, and you wouldn't really be able to get like Bearmon back for like, you know, Diego, because Diego's dead anyway, as I mentioned, but you know, Bearmon became a celestial Digimon, and that Digimon, yes, will probably, you know, remembers their remembers their partner, their DigiDestined, but we, you know, don't really know anything else about them. You know, we haven't seen them since. And Digimon Adventure is really the only harmonious ones, as they're referred to as, also that we interact with, is Azulongmon. The other three we don't see except for like little flashbacks in Digimon Adventure Tri. But that's going off route. Menoa, a brilliant scientist that she is, you know, once she serves her time, or I guess her community service type thing, can be helping Izzy and his group and everything, with like her being extremely highly monitored with what she's been working on or anything like that, to make sure she doesn't create another Eosmon or go after DigiDestined again. It is revealed that once Eosmon is defeated in the, you know, in the Neverworld and everything, all the other DigiDestined are freed from it, and they're all allowed to wake up in the real world, and they're all fine, and their Digimon come back. As I also stated, Tai and Matt, of course, still have to say goodbye to Agumon and Gabumon. That does not change. Menoa was not wrong about that in regards to, like, you know, you reach your potential, you stop growing, your Digimon disappears. Still sad, but she wasn't lying about that. And to a degree, Menoa is very careful with like how she explains things to the DigiDestined. She does not explain that she's the one that created Eosmon. She says that one day Eosmon appeared and started doing this. Not a lie. She's very good at hiding her motivations for that thing. So that's what we have for Menoa, Eosmon, and Morphomon. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a nice rest of your day, and I thank you for watching. Bye! Do you know why Digimon partners pick the children they work with? It's because they're full of potential. The possibilities are endless, their choices result in growth, and that growth and potential produces an enormous amount of energy. Surely you understand your growth was the trigger for your partner Digimon to be able to digivolve. As we live our lives, the choices we make help us grow. But as you grow older, the power of your Digimon steadily dwindles. And once it's gone, the bond between Digimon and partner is broken forever.